Hey guys, Barcode Pairs coming to you with another top blah 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 video, and this is going to be one of the top 10 videos. Macrocosmos literally has nothing to do with this video, it's just because I couldn't be bothered to get my logo up or anything like that. But this is going to be a top 10 video on my favorite decks of all time, and sort of up to date now. There are going to be some very obscure decks and some very well known decks. But this is also going to be about a lot of decks which I have played throughout the whole of this game. And just some decks which I just didn't really play but I still liked. So without further ado, let's get on with this video. Number 10. DD Monarchs, or Macro Monarchs, or whatever you'd like to call it. Back in the day when I started really playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I started getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh! About 3 years ago. And the only deck I really had to play was a Macro Monarch deck, which had 3 DD Scout Plane and 3 DD Survivor with 3 Caius and 3 Macro 3 D-Fissure. And at that time it was really good just to be able to just play that deck. It meant I could also combat the meta at the time, which was Chaos Dragons, Wind-Ups, and just quite a lot of random things like Light Swarm was still being seen and stuff like that. And it was just a real fun deck, and then I could play at my locals and everyone would be like, oh, he's the DD player, blah, 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 blah. And it was just quite a nice deck. It was very slow, obviously, but it was just fun to play. Number 9. Jinzo Returner OTK. This was back with the Chaos Dragon format, and I never made this deck in real life, but I was playing it on Dueling Network, and it was very reliant on Future Fusion, and really the way it worked, it was you would just really keep your consistency through the Junk Synchrons and Synchron Fusionist or whatever it is, or Fusionist, I can't remember what it is. It was just a level 2 monster, which was whenever you use this for a Synchro material, add 1 fusion card from your deck to your hand, and when you'd play it, you'd pretty much win, purely because you'd send 3 Jinzos, then 3 Jinzo Returners, 4 Cybernetic, and obviously you send the Cyber Dragon because you need it for Chimera Takeover Dragon or whatever, and you just have game on that board really, just because you'd sync up and you'd probably go Catasta or something else, and you just sweep the game just because of that. So it was fun, but it had its flaws. It was apparently one of the best OTKs at the time, but obviously at the moment it wouldn't really stand up because 1, Future Fusion is banned. Number 8. Dark Worlds. Now there's a good reason why this deck is so low on my list, because I used to play Dark Worlds quite a lot. It was actually one of the first competitive decks I really played when I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it was easy to get and the cards weren't too expensive apart from the tour guides and obviously the Zen mains and the Leviers. That was about it, but I still managed to get it all together. But the reason this deck is so low on my list is because I've really lost interest in this deck. I've got it maxed raritied. I just don't play it anymore. It just sits on the board, and I'm not selling it because it's got that sort of sentimental and nostalgic value to me. But just purely because it was the I like how it says Grepher instead of Grapher. But anyway, it has that just feel because it was the first competitive deck I really played, and I've just got sentimental value to it as all. But yep, it was a really powerful deck, but suffered to this bad boy. But without further ado, let's go on with the next one. 7. Fableds. Now this is a deck which has sentimental value to me as well, purely because this was the deck I played after playing Dark Worlds, because I felt Fableds were, in my opinion, was just a... Whoa, go away. Felt Fableds, in my opinion, was just a much funner deck. I mean, being able to use stuff like Phoenix Wing Wind Blast and all things like that, I felt that the Fabled engine was just a lot more fun, and I felt that it looked a lot better than Dark Worlds. But that was just my opinion, obviously, but I just felt that it looked a little bit creepy, and I liked creepy cards at that point because I thought, it's kind of cool. And plus, these cards weren't even that powerful, but they could do quite a bit, purely because of their big-ass monsters. Obviously, Rajin would just be... if you wanted to go for the Quasar build just so you could keep drawing, but I wasn't really into Quasar because I live in England, so I can't really use it. So I went for more of a Chaos build and just mainly utilized like Kodabi and Unicorn, sometimes Valkyrus and even Leviathan. but most of the time I went for the Leviathan build just to keep repeating the same play over and over again. 6. Sky Scourge Neuralis. Oh my days. I still play this deck now, purely because I still find it really, really fun, and when you actually pull it off, it's really cool. It mainly revolves around you comboing off with Phantom of Chaos and things like that. I mean, it was just so much fun, in my opinion. Just being able to pitch it to the grave, and then just get the effect off because of Phantom of Chaos. I mean, this card was just too good, especially in combination with this. And I just loved it so much. It was just such a good bloody deck. It wasn't obviously that good because it required you to top deck, but that's why you played stuff like the Dark Creator. So when you did top deck, it wasn't so hard. And also, right now, it's not too bad. It's still a fun deck. You can get a good setup with Lavavel Chain. And when you do eventually use the Phantom of Chaos to use that effect, you can put Dark Creator on your deck, on the top of your deck. Special the Dark Creator, then use the effect of Dark Creator to bring back Superbia, then Superbia brings up Zerato, so then you can go for a good massive hit of damage. But again, it was just purely for fun purposes, so yeah. Number 5, Assault Modes. I loved this deck. Again, going back to, going back to when I first started playing this game, Assault Mode Stardust I had a lot of hate for, because I used to hate this card so much, because my mate used to use Assault Mode Dragunities, and he always got this out in the first turn, and it was just annoying. And you can still run this deck to this day. It can still be quite consistent, because obviously we have free Rota, so you can search Goblinberg and the whatever level Fortuna you really want, and we also have Tankies in order to search for the Assault Beasts. So it can be quite consistent in its own way, and getting the Assault Mode Stardust is not too difficult. But obviously it's not that strong, because you can just tempt the Assault Mode Stardust with other things and you can just get past it. But it sits in my 5 because it has a lot of sentimental value to me. Now before we get into my next top 4, let's just go over some of the decks which we've gone through. So we went through the whole macro Monarch, which was just a really fun deck for me to play when I was just starting out in the game. And at that point, the graveyard was very, very needed, and macro was at 3, Defissure were at 3, so I felt, why not just bring this old deck back? Jinzo Returner, being one of the best OTK decks at the time, was just fun to play and easy to get wins. Dark World's been playing it for a long time, but it sits in 8 because I have really lost my patience with the deck, but it still holds sentimental value. Number 7 being Fables, purely because of the fact of these creepy little buggers just have a specific place in my heart in this game. Sky Scourge, purely because I thought the effects of the Sky Scourge cards were really cool. They look really cool as well. But again, the deck just is not good enough for me to really want to continue to play, so it still sits in my heart as one of my favorite decks to play. And the Assault Modes, purely because Assault Modes just gave me a lot of trouble when I was younger playing this game. And playing the deck for myself, this was actually a deck I did play myself. I did a weird combination of Dark Worlds and Fableds, so it had a weird sort of consistency to it, but it wasn't too bad. And it was just really fun for me to play at the time. So now let's move on to the rest. Number 4! Erratic Gishkis. I loved this deck with all my fucking heart back in the day. I felt it was so good. Having all the Erratic stuff at 3, and also having all the Gishki stuff at 3, this deck was incredibly powerful, being able to loop the Gush Kraken effect and make your opponent have no cards in their hand at all. So it was just really cool just be able to do that. And it was just amazing because you could do it in the first turn, and when you did it in the first turn, you'd leave your opponent with no cards in their hand, and you'd have 3 27 beaters on the field, waiting just to kill your opponent next turn, no matter what they drew. Obviously, if they top decked a Dark Hole, it was pretty catastrophic, but that's why you had stuff like Starlight Road and things like that. So, but yeah, it was really cool just back in the day. But then Gush Kraken got hit, and well, it lost some of its consistency, but it just required you to just change the loop, and the loop it was quite good. So let's move on. Number 4, Evil Swarms. It doesn't surprise me that this deck would indeed be on here, and I'm probably guessing it wouldn't surprise any of you that it would be on here. purely because the amount of time I put into this deck. I felt that this deck was absolutely amazing. I loved it so much. I couldn't afford Dragon Rulers at the time, so I just went for the Evilswarm deck. And I was playing with the Evilswarm deck for a really long time beforehand, and I felt he was just really cool. It was just a good deck, and it just sort of helped to combat the format. Not really, but it looked like it did. It looked good on paper, but in reality, it was just kind of like, man, this is alright, I guess. But it was a good deck for me to use. I was using it for a very long time, and I even got in top 32 at regionals when it was mainly Constellas and Fire Fists at the time, so that was quite nice for me to be able to do that. So let's move on to the next two in the top two. Number 2, Medolshay. Yes, this is definitely in the number 2 because I used this deck so much when Angeli came out. I love the fact, the only thing that really made me want to play this deck would probably be the fact, not Angeli. You guys were probably going to think that I was just about to say Angeli. No. What made me want to play this deck in particular was purely because I loved the idea of being able to beat my opponent with lots and lots of puddings. Being able to just smash my opponent and them have some really badass looking monsters, and I'm just walking around with monsters looking like this. It was just pretty cool for me to be able to do that. And I also loved the way the deck worked. It was definitely my playstyle, special summoning a lot and just doing a lot of nifty effects. Wait, no, you can fuck off. But you know, it was really good for me just to be able to use this deck. I mean, I got in the top 200 at the London YCS with it. I also got 12th twice in a row with it at many regionals. Well, I say many, I mean 2. And yeah, this deck made me a better player. Oh, I feel it did. But without further ado, this deck is always going to have a space in my top 10s just because I loved it so much. I don't play it anymore. I wish I did, but I've just kind of took it apart and I just haven't been bothered to rebuild it. But before we go to the first deck of the list, you probably can guess what it is. But I'm just going to put out a couple of honorable mentions because it was hard for me to really choose which was my favorite deck. And I have had quite a lot of favorite decks. Some of them have already been, in fact most of them have already been just said. So without further ado, let's go on with some honorable mentions. Karakuri. I used to love this deck so much when I made it. Just being able to loop the Burrito and being able to get out Beast and Royal Decree was just too strong at the time. Hat. This is one of my favorite decks purely because of the fact of I just thought it was an amazing custom deck. And I do like custom decks. I mean, Neuralis is a custom deck because you're just putting a bunch of cards together just to make one deck. It's not a specific archetype. And it was just really new. We never really saw much like this apart from like Dot Dad and things like that or whatever. So it's just pretty cool just to be able to see. And finally, Mythic Rulers. Mythic Ruler gets the most top mention in this because it was my favorite deck for a very long time to play. I played it at regionals twice, I think. I didn't do too well with it, but I didn't have Curry Bandits or anything like that. But Mythic Rulers was one of my favorite decks to run, purely because I felt Felgram was the best monster I had ever seen in my life. And I just wanted the deck to play it. And also, Dragon Rulers was one of my favorite decks for a very, very long time. So without further ado, let's get on to my top favorite deck. Finally, number 1, Burning Abyss. This deck is my favorite deck of all time right now because I love its playstyle. I love the background story behind it being Dante's Inferno. I mean, I got fucking amazing marks at MPS, or well, religious studies. So reading these stories was just really cool for me. And for an archetype to come out based on it was just so cool. I wanted to play this deck, but I never thought it was really that good when it first came out. But then when it got its new support, I was like, I want this deck. This deck is going to be mine, and I will get it. I spent a lot of money to get it, and I do not regret it because it is my favorite deck by far. At my most recent regionals, I got 10th. If I would have won that game, I would have definitely qualified, and it was such a shame for me to lose that game. But there's always other regionals, and if you see my last video about the new support, then, or what I think the new support should be, then, you know. But anyway, please leave a like, comment, and please subscribe, and please give me your top 10 favorite decks, or even top 5. I'm interested to know. So, see you guys later.